Okay, this is a response to Randy Helsman about his video entitled "Does God Lie?" And he starts his account towards the beginning of the Bible, the story of the snake and Eve eating from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And according to his translation over there, it says that on the day that you eat of the fruit, you shall surely die. This is, of course, a translation, and just to note it, in the Hebrew it says that the day that you eat from it, mot tamut, which is a doubling and intensification of the word for death. But the point over here is that according to Randy, because it says on the day that you eat it, that you shall surely die, and since we see that Adam didn't die on that day, and therefore God is already lying. Now I find this to be not convincing, sort of absurd, ridiculous. First of all, from that day on, Adam becomes mortal. He is subject to death. He does indeed die at 930 years of age, and so it is fulfilled, and it's decreed on that day. So I don't have a problem with that. So that throws out the whole idea of the lie. Now, he interprets, or you interpret the story allegorically, that the snake tempts Eve with eating from the fruit, that Eve experiences the fruit in terms of female sexuality, and the snake experiences the fruit in terms of male sexuality, or that he represents male sexuality. Okay, let's go with that way of thinking about it for the time being. And then you conclude that the author of the story had a problem with sexuality. Well, okay, that's an interesting way of doing the investigation, but let's say that it does have to do with sexuality. So I would say the interpretation, and I think this is very clear, is that the problem with the snake over here is that, like it's snaky, sneaky, same idea. So what you have is an ulterior motive. You don't have a kind of caring human relationship. You don't have an idea of care one for the other. What you have is, fine, you want to go with allegorical, you have reptilian brain snake, appealing to, some kind of sensuality in the woman. So you have this kind of immediate gratification, which we're all familiar with, and the warning is that you will change when you shift to that immediate gratification, that your sensibility will change, that it creates let's say, a mythological space where man is going through a transformation from something which is prior to this being affected by this change that comes with the arousal of the satisfaction of immediate gratification. And what we're being told over here is that something very risky is going on, risky in the sense of something that is going to have enormous consequences. And if we take it mythologically or allegorically, the emphasis is not on a perspective towards sexuality. The emphasis is on the alternative to being obsessed with self-gratification and immediate gratification. And the alternative to that is some kind of process of maturity, some kind of process of building oneself, and that is what the Bible turns out to be all about. So, are there stringent warnings, stringent punishments, stringent causes and effects in the Bible? Yeah, of course. Life is like that. And what we're being told is that if you don't get off the treadmill of instant gratification, that one thing leads to another, and it can get pretty bad. So again, so the snake represents bad sensuality, not sensuality that is being built into some kind of relationship, and that's a critical distinction. And the whole idea of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil is that now you're going to know things in terms of by knowing yourself, that you're going to refer to yourself in knowing things. And I think what this means is that it's a different way of thinking, that once you have tasted the fruit of that kind of self-gratification, selfish gratification, that it changes your way of knowing the world. And that's what it means that they ate from the tree of the fruit of good and evil, and that they were changed, and that they now had to undergo the decree of death, was that now their way of knowing was very much a selfish way of knowing that clouded the mind. And you could say mystically that there had to be a death from that way of knowing in order to return to a kind of clarity, in order to return to a God consciousness. So from that point of view, on that day they incurred death because they fell to the level of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which had not yet was not yet built up. They had no way of dealing with that kind of immediate gratification and to withstand that. And so that brought death into the world. It brought into the world the necessity of going through a process of dying to that way of looking at things. And the rest of the Bible really, the rest of the story really follows from that until you reach some kind of loving, caring relationships, and in the midst of a world that's a difficult world. So does God lie? I don't think this is a good place to start with that supposition, if there is a good place to start. So that's what I have to say. Thanks a lot. Take care.